Hey guys, and welcome to the newest episode of Be Hero Presents the Bump Card Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brian, and with me tonight is my tag partner, Psycho. How you doing tonight, Psycho?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's gonna be an interesting night. I was tired, and then you told me what you wanted to do for tonight's topic, and so yeah, I'm wide awake now and ready to fight.
Yeah, well, tonight's topic kind of was brought up on the fly just because of everything going on right now in the wrestling world. If you haven't heard of all the drama, we're going to go over it tonight. I'm going to call this episode lovingly the eye roll. If you guys are a regular listener to our podcast, you will know that every time that Psycho brings up CM Punk, I do the eye roll. Obviously, you can't see it as being a podcast, but I always eye roll, and that's because I can't stand Punk anymore. I enjoyed him when I was younger. I enjoyed him when he first came back to the or when he first went to the WWE and a lot of his stint in there. I have not enjoyed his most recent return, as well as the return back for AEW, which we've talked about in length. And we're going to go ahead and talk about that, as well as all of the drama going on right now at AEW that Punk is involved in. I'm not going to say is cause of. I believe he's the cause of. But I'm not going to say he's the cause of because we're going to argue about that.
We are gonna argue, and I find this funny for everyone out there. Like I said previously, this was not my idea for tonight's topic. Okay, this is a total Brian topic.
Yes, it
And
is.
so when he told me he wanted to argue about CM Punk some more, I am here for that.
Well, and I apologize to anybody that heard this and decided to cut off real quick. We'll be right back with you guys next week on another great episode that's going to be a lot less Punk. But if you guys have ever heard us go on about Punk, you guys can see all of the great content that's going to create. But there's also a discussion to be talked about here too, where it deals with uh, control and deals with being the bigger man in the business and working with people you might not like and things like that, which we're going to talk about as well. So let's get started though with that. If you guys haven't heard, there has been a lot of drama coming out of AEW, specifically dealing with Collision. Uh, as he puts it, the Punk territory, the drama-free zone. That is definitely not that right now. So, Psycho, let's go ahead and talk about some of the instances that have gone on over the last couple of weeks.
So the first one that I heard about was the promo that CM Punk cut after this past week's Collision, after it was off the air.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let me pull up that promo here, and I'm going to read kind of what happened. So CM Punk cut a promo where, let's see here, he said he said that he went to a store and he saw a bunch of Hangman Adam Page action figures, and then called him. Let's see it, because I'm trying to find the exact quote. I'm sorry, guys. Oh yeah, here it is. Earlier today, I went to a local supermarket and I figured out why they call him Hangman is because the pegs in the toy aisle are full of Hangman action figures because nobody wants to buy them. He's a peg warmer, unlike me, who moves merchandise and pops ratings and sells toys. So that was the first thing that I heard, and from what I understand, I read somewhere that FTR was out there and they didn't know it was going to happen, and and Punk just kind of said what he said unplanned.
Yeah.
Now, when I first heard that, I was like, oh boy. I was like, this is not going to go over well, I'm sure. Now, granted, both sides, you can say, Punk stirring the pot or whatever. Obviously, something had to have triggered this, I would think.
Such an apologist.
uh but I've also heard, in interviews, you know, Hangman Adam Page say stuff and I don't know. I
Where? Show me one place that Paige or any
okay,
other
okay,
members of the Elite have publicly said anything bad about Punk at all, especially since he's been back on Collision, where it's
I
almost
guess
every bloody episode, either on air or in the media scrum, or obviously this one was off the air, but still in front of people. He takes shots, man. Needless shots.
he does. This was off the air though. I mean, it wasn't on television. And if you've been to enough shows, you know that what happens off the air, people say things and do crazy things all the time just to entertain, and so I did hear though that CM Punk did apologize for it.
Yes, he did. Um, he did do an apology within this last week, but it took several
Correct.
days for it. Um, and but it's what his apology kind of came off more of the I apologize for you being a whiny bitch kind of apology. Not those words specifically, but that's definitely the like spirit and tone it felt like.
Okay, but I mean, it's words, right? It's all it is words. Like, I mean, and it's not even that bad. Like you can't be so thin-skinned in this industry. And it's Punk. Punk, that's what he does. He stirs up controversy, and as Eric Bischoff once said, controversy creates cash, right? And obviously the money is there. And I know you kind of mentioned that about not doing business and working with people you don't like. From what I've heard, that's on the Elite side, because Punk wants to make money with this. He wants to have those matches, and it's the Elite that doesn't want anything to do with it.
I wouldn't either.
There's money to be made.
But there goes to the concept of being in a toxic work environment, right? You're working with a person that you don't like. Okay, fine. You're doing that for a story, and if that's what they end up doing with this whole Adam Page thing,
Mhm.
I'm fine with it, right? But if they don't do something with it, if they're not looking to make money with it, if both sides aren't fine
That's
with it,
stupid.
it is stupid. But then why are you taking the shot, right? Like at some point, like you would have had to have the conversation to be like, look, I know we've got this drama, and I know we're not really, the best on terms right now, but we can make money doing this story, right? We can make money doing this program together. People would pay tons of money to come see that,
Mhm.
and they would like to see a match between uh, Punk and FTR versus, say,
Mhm.
Adam Page or Kenny Omega versus
And the Young
and the Young
Bucks.
Bucks there, or some fashion of that, right? They would
Mhm.
pay. That would be a huge box for them to work on. But if the other side doesn't want to do it, don't take shots. At that point, you're just being a petty bitch.
Did Shawn not do this with Brett? I mean, this is not new. This is not new stuff that's happened. And you know what? At the time, it probably pissed off both of those guys and whatnot, and they took shots, right? But it was as a fan, I don't know how you can like look at this and not be like interested and intrigued by where this could go. Because if they do end up working this out to have a match, there's nothing else they have on their roster that would sell as many tickets and would draw as much money as if they turn this into an angle. Just like the Brett and Sean stuff.
Yeah, Brett and Sean, Edge and Matt Hardy, like there's
Yes.
stuff like that they could totally do, and I can see that being a thing. I'm not disagreeing with you. They could totally make money. This could be the best story in AEW that they could do, but it doesn't feel like that's what they're doing, right? It feels like Punk's just being a
And
bitch.
I mean, maybe he's saying this stuff because he hopes he really is trying to push it and almost force it into a story, where it's like where they have to make money with it because it'd be silly not to.
Yeah, that totally makes it better.
I don't know. It's I can't I don't see anything too wrong with this. I mean, it's entertaining. And if you get I mean the comments weren't even that bad. It's talking about
Oh
I mean
no,
it's kind of playful actually. It's like talking about action figures still on the shelves. I mean, wrestlers do that all the time and there's not an angle to be made of it. Don't tell me that like Hulk Hogan hasn't made comments about people kind of saying that they don't draw or they're,
oh, I'm
or Kevin
totally
Nash
gonna bring up Hogan here shortly because that's
or
who he's turning
even
into.
Kevin Nash saying like vanilla midgets about Benoit and Malenko and those
Mhm.
types. It's like that wasn't going to be an angle either. So if we're holding Punk to the standard of why is he saying this and I can't stand the guy because of this, well then
Oh,
put
there,
Kevin Nash in that category,
and I do.
put Shawn Michaels in that category.
Older Sean,
Uh,
I do, and it's for the same reason, right? It's working in a company that you don't feel comfortable working in, and the reports are that there are a ton of workers who don't feel like they could speak up. They can say anything to tick off Punk right now, or even like talk to him. Right? There are people who won't even. He's getting the big man treatment, like that won't even look him in the eye kind of scenario right now, because they're afraid of the power he has for Collision that they won't make TV, that they won't make money.
and why do you think that is? Why do you think Punk has so much power on that show? It's because he is a draw.
It's
He's actually
because Tony Khan's a mark.
but there's not too many wrestlers that come on a show and the whole show's and I will say this, the whole show's not built around him. If you actually watch Collision, they have had some of the best wrestling on that show, not having Punk. It has some of the best wrestling, not even taking Punk into the equation, that it is just better than what you're getting elsewhere. They had one of the best tag team matches that you'll ever see between FTR and Bullet Club Gold.
Mhm.
They had that. They had one of the best ladder matches I've seen in a long time with Andrade and Buddy Murphy.
Yeah, I heard that was really good.
Oh my gosh, you know what it reminded me of? And it's fresh in my mind because I'm a few weeks behind on Collision. I just watched that episode just the other day.
Mhm.
Uh it reminded me of Chris Jericho versus Chris Benoit ladder match. That's how stiff it was.
Ooh.
That's the story was excellent. Like it was hard to find a flaw in that match. You need to go out and see that match. You will love that match.
And I probably
It
will.
has
But I can't stand the thought that you're building a whole brand behind someone who is so toxic that people can't even feel like they can talk to him. Right?
okay, but that's not everybody. Ask FTR. They like him.
Okay, best buddies? Sure, go ahead. Right up until he finds a reason to disown you.
Bullet Club Black or Gold, whatever. They've wrestled him. He loves, he worked with them, House of Black, Andrade.
Oh no, there's a whole thing
all
about
of these
House
are
of
his
Black
guys.
too.
Miro.
House of Black apparently has got they've got issues going on right now because of how stiff House of Black was with them.
Sure. And that's something else, I guess. We'll have to take an eye on. I don't know how serious that was or if that was just kind of tongue in cheek.
That's
I
the
don't
problem,
know.
right? You don't know. You don't know how serious this is, right? This reminds me of latter day WCW when the booking was done by like Hogan, right?
Mhm.
Where your boys get all the time and everybody else can't even speak up a word because they don't want to lose out on the payday because they only pay people who worked, right? And everyone was afraid of talking to Hogan or Nash or Hall because of the same reason. This is in the same boat, man. And this is going to cause a cancer for AEW. It already has.
And you're comparing him to Hogan, but Hogan was one of the biggest draws in professional wrestling history. If you're getting compared to Hogan, I would take that as a compliment,
I would
right?
too if you were getting compared to Hogan in the right way.
Well, I mean,
You keep talking about how he's a draw, right? How
mhm.
he's money. Uh, Yet all you're seeing on the internet is people bashing him for all of this negativity and stuff like that. I'm
Well,
sure people are drawing to him because they want to see the controversy and stuff like that, but that's not the reason why you want to always go to W or to a wrestling show. That don't get me
is
wrong,
it?
there's a big sell to that for story wise, if that's the story. But eventually, if you're nothing but the drama, they're gonna get you should get rid of that person.
But you mentioned that you don't know, if it's tongue in cheek or if he's being serious. Isn't that what wrestling is? It's a work. You don't know when you can blend that line, blur that line of what's real, what's serious, what's not,
If this is a
what's a
work,
joke.
it's one of the best works of all time. All right,
Right.
this is like the same level of like Owen Hart still being alive style of work. All right,
Which is not true.
no, no, that's my point.
Not people are like, wait, what? People are calling their friends right now to hold on. I paused it right before we said it's not real, right? They're calling their friends to say, hey, you've got to listen to this. Apparently Owen Hart's alive.
Right.
Marks. Okay. So you also though, there was another point I wanted to make there on oh my gosh. I lost my train of thought there. So but Punk is kind of he's weaving this story. It's like maybe it is a work, maybe it's not. But it's getting people guessing. And there's lots of guys that were people that people just loved to go to the show to see him get the crap kicked out of him or something like that. And if he does that, then people will pay to see him. People will pay to see him get attacked. And
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the goal of a heel is to be that
right.
good. I mean, we both know that. We've both done that.
Mhm.
But it
But he's not getting booked as a heel, right? He's the baby
yeah,
face on the show. So it's kind of a weird dynamic there for sure. I will say this though, if we're talking about a show that's completely built around Punk, at least Punk, it's his show, right? We can all the rest of the stuff is on there, and he's having a big part in that. Um, but it's basically his brand,
mm-hmm.
and they're doing the same ratings that Dynamite is doing right now. They've built that up to drawing 700,000 people again versus Dynamite's 700,000. So who's the draw? Punk is drawing that built around that. And then you have the other show that has to have everybody else trying to draw the rating that Punk is.
So, well, I don't disagree with you, right? Punk is definitely the draw for Collateral, even though there are a lot of great workers that work on the show.
Collision.
Or Collision, excuse me.
Yes.
There are a lot of great workers that are on there, but he is definitely the draw. But he's the draw in the wrong way, right? The old school reason, thing of like trying to get cheap heat. That's exactly what this feels like. He's saying things to be controversial, right? And he's saying things to get under the ire of of people, and he's trying to get controversy going to get the ratings. But eventually, that's going to die off. People are just be like, "I
Maybe.
don't care. I don't care." That's how I felt, like almost from day one, because that's how he rolls.
Okay, you can say from day one, but there was no drama until he left.
No, I'm talking about for Collision.
Oh, okay.
For day one for
Because
Collision. I'm
like
sorry.
if we're talking about AEW, it's like
When he
there
came
was
back,
no drama.
I was excited when he came
Mhm.
back. We had talked about it. I was
It
very
was the
excited.
loudest pop that anybody's gotten in recent memory.
Yeah. And I thought that EW was a perfect place for him. And then it just, I started to dislike the things. I didn't think he was still able to work like he used to, but he was trying to. Like, I started disliking his work. And then I started disliking his person. And the stuff, and don't get me wrong, I am by no means like a huge fan of the Bucks or Kenny Omega. I mean, I like Kenny Omega. I think he's a fantastic worker. And we've talked about the Bucks before. They're a one note kind of thing unless they want to tell a story. And I'm not a fan of Adam Page either. I think he's one note. And I think all the shenanigans that happened between all of them and Punk and everything else was a bunch of babies fighting, a bunch of prima donnas fighting in the background. But I've got more respect right now for the Elite than I do for Punk because they have not said word one bad mouthing Punk. They have not said word one about any of that.
So there's a lot of stories that came out of this, right? And we're going to get into some of these other ones here in a second. I will say this, though. Do you think it's a coincidence that all of these stories, even stuff that supposedly from like weeks ago, right, are getting leaked at the same time, right? And most of them, and we'll get to one that I feel like we both agree that doesn't make them look bad. Most of them are all making Punk look like the bad guy here. Who's leaking that? Maybe it's, they might not be talking stuff publicly, but we all know that the Elite is good buddies with the Dave Meltzers of the world. And so when that stuff gets leaked, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out who's leaking the information, right? And who's saying this. So I think to me, that's worse. That's passive aggressive. Punk is at least somebody that he'll say exactly what's on his mind, as opposed to, oh, we're the good guys over here, and then talking behind their back, and leaking it to the dirt sheets and whatnot. And it's only one side of the story. You're not getting, another side of the story. And so it's very clear to me.
Sure you will. I'm sure Punk will not be able to hesitate himself from saying something on Saturday.
And yet he'll be seen as the bad guy when he's merely responding to what's going on. And
yes, there's a high probability that some of the leak stuff is going on because of other people. And I'm not siding with the Elite. I have more respect for them currently. If I find out that they have been the ones leaking it and they're the ones doing the shady crap in the back, my opinion will definitely change. I'm having respect for them. It won't, though, change for Punk. I've lost pretty much every amount of respect I have for Punk, save this all being in a fantastic work. If that's the case, my opinion might turn around on it. But it's got to become an amazing work. Otherwise, it's going to stay where it's at.
I mean, I guess we'll find out, right? We'll find out in the months to come. And
yeah. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of these.
Okay. So the next one, so this is the second one that I heard was so Ryan Nemeth, who is Dolph Ziggler's brother, for those that don't know, and apparently he's with AEW.
Yeah, he's the Hollywood Hunk. Is his gimmick name?
Okay, so, I haven't even seen him on AEW. But
he works mostly dark, and then usually comes in to get squashed. But he's been there for a couple of years now.
Okay, right, and this is the first I even knew of him being there, so that says a lot. He's not the more famous Ziggler or or Nemeth or whatever in the business, but anyway, so apparently it actually stemmed I guess weeks ago when Punk first came back to Collision. I guess Nemeth did an interview where he called Punk the softest man alive.
Yes,
right, on Twitter. So I guess it wasn't an interview, but he said it on Twitter. And that was in response to Punk's promo where he returned, where he labeled AEW favorites as soft, right, which was obviously a dig at the Elite. So when Punk appeared on Dynamite right after he returned, he confronted Nemeth again face to face, not talking behind people's backs, right? So and I guess tensions got heated. He basically, I guess, said, hey, do you have a problem with me, or we need to go outside? And they hashed it out, and Nemeth actually apologized to Punk and said he was just trying to get heat or whatever, right? Because everybody's trying to attach their name to Punk, to try to better themselves. Like this guy that's hardly ever been on TV, and he's trying to say something about Punk so somebody will notice him. That's my opinion. That's not fact, but that's my opinion on the whole situation. Um, but they had a conversation about it, um, and Punk reportedly, I'm reading this. This is not me making this up. Punk reportedly told Namath that his counterfoot Bucks line was all a work to get heat on himself following the brawl out situation. Right. So again, you couldn't not mention. I know you got upset. Why is he mentioning the Bucks? If they're not doing an angle, but you can't appear after all of that and not bring it up at all. Because I would have been upset at that. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you soft, Punk? No, he's not. He mentioned it, right? So he admitted that. And Punk felt that Namath's tweet was his way of trying to score points for his friends in the Elite. Because he actually, I guess, he appears on Being the Elite a lot.
Mhm.
And so they're friends. Let's see here. But Namath reportedly apologized to Punk and they shook hands. So see, they squashed all of that right there. Obviously, now, Namath apparently, was it this past Collision
Yes.
that he showed up? So I guess Namath, was booked for the show.
Yep.
Came to the show, and then was told to leave. Just that a plane had been booked for him, and he could go home because he wasn't needed. Now, I don't know if for sure that we know that was Punk's doing or not, or just a miscommunication, or maybe they had too many guys or whatever. I know wrestling promotions they overbook talent all the time, and then if they don't need them, you can go home or whatever. So we're hearing again one side saying, "Oh, Punk, told him to go home or whatnot," but we actually haven't heard somebody that's credible that puts their name on the line and says, I heard Punk himself say this, or anything substantial. So this is all hearsay,
very much so,
of anonymous sources blaming it on Punk. And again, that's where I think the Elite is leaking this stuff to make it, so it's the same thing with the Colt Cabana stuff, where even Tony Khan said Punk had nothing to do with Colt Cabana getting moved to Ring of Honor and everything, but yet everybody was like, oh no, they're for sure positive that Punk, was the reason. And Tony Khan came right out and said it, that said, no, he had nothing to do with it. And Punk said he had nothing to do with it. But everybody just believes that side because that's what's getting fed to the dirt sheets by it. I wonder who.
Yeah. And when somebody, is trying to cover for somebody else, they're like, oh yeah, it totally wasn't that person. Yeah, it was my idea, right? You're trying to save face with that. That's totally the thing that never happened.
Well, I guess
that being said, I don't disagree with you. We do not know for sure that this was Punk, right? But when you get to a part where you're getting divorced 3 times and it's always the other person's fault, you might want to look at yourself, kind of scenario, because you've got the Colt Cabana stuff, you've got the issues with the Elite, you've got now Namath and several others who we're going to talk about. Now, again, we don't know if Namath was because of Punk, and you're right. Yeah, especially now, like we've gotten to house shows and things like that where we were offered to come in, and then we just stay around the catering because they didn't have anything for us. Right. It happens. And then this is essentially the same thing, but that's the weird part to me, right? You would go there and you would be at the show and you would just not get, it was like, oh, we don't need you tonight, but stick around just in case something happens, like somebody gets hurt or something like that. Why would they send him away? Why would they be like, oh, well, we got a flight for you to get out of here, right? That's the weird part. And that part has been said that's a true thing, that's what happened. Not that he's like, oh, we don't have anything for you, just stay around, which I'm sure for him has not the first time that has had to happen, where he's had to just stay around the locker room or stay around the catering because they didn't end up having anything for him.
That is the weird part, because I mean, it doesn't make sense either way, because if Punk did, say, hey, I don't want him here, or whatever, it's weird to me that they shook hands and they squashed it, and then Punk would say that, Because
Well,
why would you?
the rumor, and this is a rumor, but the rumor is that Punk has been trying to get Collision, his territory as he's called it,
Mhm.
to be only people that are loyal and trustworthy to him.
Well, let's be honest, that's the whole point of the show, right? I mean, that's why Collision, it was talked about that it was going to be a soft split, right? Where it was going to be the guys that are mostly, Punk's friends and Elite's friends, was going to be on Dynamite, so to speak. Um, and so that's kind of the thing. So that's not, I mean, that's more a Tony Khan thing than a Punk thing, as far as if Tony Khan didn't want that to be the case, why would Miro or Alistair Blatt or whatever, why would or gosh, or Buddy Matthews, all these guys only appear on Collision. Why would they only appear there if that wasn't kind of the case? And it's reported that guys like Miro and Andrade, they're friends with Punk. They
Yeah,
like Punk, you
yeah,
know?
and but that comes to being a problem to me too, and it's one. It's again having a show that's primarily for one guy and his boys. Uh, feels wrong to me in general. And two, this goes back to old WCW days when it was being ran by the Outsiders and Hogan,
Right.
because then it was only your boys making TV. You're taking away opportunities for other people.
And that didn't just happen. I mean, yes, it happened in WCW, especially when Hogan first went to WCW. Who started getting jobs? Hogan's friends, right? The
Hmm.
Nasty Boys, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the Big Boss, man. All of these guys started getting jobs over there. And then when Hogan went to TNA, right? You started seeing, oh, Scott Hall's here. X, you know, gosh, all the Nasty Boys even showed up there too, like, which is so weird, in TNA in
Right.
2000, whatever it was, 2010 or whatever. And it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Brian Allen's still
Um,
alive.
right, exactly. It was like, well, I thought that with X Pac, I was like, oh my gosh, he looks like Death. Like what? Like,
He got
but
better.
that also happened in WWF with the Click, right? You had Shawn and Razor and X Pac and and Triple H, and heck, even Just Incredible, and all these got Aldo Montoya at the time. They were all getting on TV because the Click was running things, right? And so this is nothing new. It's nothing new. It's been done in
New,
wrestling for
but
decades.
is it right? And that's what I'm saying is like, and I'm a huge Sean mark, but even then, like the way Sean's attitude was, I've never been a big fan of, and stuff like that. It was never my bag. Like I was never a fan of any of that. I was never a fan of stuff with Hogan doing it in WCW. I'm not a fan here with Punk doing it because that takes opportunities away from the best workers or the best stories to be told. Because if you have to put your boys in those spots, they might not be the best people for that story or best people for that spot at the time.
I see your point. Because you're right. Like if you in WCW especially, like it ran off guys like Steve Austin and Mick Foley and these types, that
Mhm.
ended up, getting pushed aside, right, for the Hogan friends, and then same thing with the Click, you had guys like Shane Douglas and Bam Bam Bigelow and these guys,
Well, Shane Douglas got bit twice because he got it back when he went over to WCW after.
yeah, so it was, um, uh, but you had all of this happening. Now, granted, the business in both of those cases ended up getting better for the promotion. Like the Click running things, yes, it was bad for a lot of guys, but the television was good because those guys were putting on the best matches, right? Same, and in WCW, it was like, okay, you're getting rid of these guys, but then WCW actually became a credible threat against WWF off of Hogan and his buddies running things. And so it goes both ways, I guess. And if that ends up happening here, where Collision ends up drawing and it starts getting over 1 million buys regularly, or buys, a million people watching regularly, and it actually starts out drawing Dynamite. And if they turn this into an angle and it ends up creating another boom, then we'll all be looking at this. It's like, okay, what, it's, was it worth it? It's like, could we maybe not be so offended? This is the generation of being offended these days. It's like people say one little joke and everybody's offended. And
Yes.
I don't know.
And and again, I don't disagree with that statement. But in both other examples we had where WCW was ran by ostensibly Hogan and Hogan and the
Mhm.
Outlaws or Outsiders, uh, there was still that steady hand, right? There was still the steady hand of Bischoff to kind of mitigate some of the crazy, some of the drama. And with the Click, McMahon was still there to help mitigate that. And both those people are strong people. Tony Khan is not, right? Tony Khan is a $1 billion fan. He's $1 billion mark. There's apparently, and I've only heard this as a rumor, but substantially true rumor. When Punk went back out for the first night of Collision, as he's walking through Gorilla, Tony's in the back, right at the monitor, and doing the CM Punk, CM Punk, CM, because he's a huge mark,
Uh-huh.
man. That's not going to be the guy to be like, sorry, Phil, you can't do that, man. Where Bischoff would have, or McMahon definitely would have, right?
Would Bischoff have done that with Hogan? I mean, all indications were that Bischoff was a huge Hogan mark back then.
He probably was, but I mean, you look at everything that was done, and it looks like Bischoff had a pretty good control on some things, not all things, but some things, right? And McMahon, same thing. I mean, he was a Sean
With
mark,
Hogan,
obviously.
well, and yeah, with Shawn, absolutely, because Shawn was the only one that would get up in his face and cuss him out, and he got away with it all.
Yeah.
And
But he
was
also was the one to help restrain certain things too, right?
Sure.
And that's what it is. But I don't feel like that's what Tony Khan could do even, right? He just feels kind of like Punk's bitch. So it's hard to say that that's going to work out well, right? I could be
Yeah.
totally wrong. This could be a huge boom. We could see in the next 5 to 10 years the wrestling scene be huge because of all of this stuff with Collision, right? That could be totally wrong.
Right.
But
And if this is a big work and Tony Khan is working us all to, and he, crafted this story, because it would have had to have had his fingerprints on it if it does end up being, a big work. I think we all view Tony Khan differently at that point, right? Because I'm with you. I think he's in over his head
yeah,
a lot of the times. Like, I mean, if you watch him at the media scrum where this all broke loose the first time, and just watch him as Punk is saying all these things with him sitting right next to him, you can see the look on his face, like he's like, "Oh crap, I don't know what to do," and he
yeah,
does nothing because he never knew what to do in that type of situation. I think Tony Khan, he thought he'd get all of his play wrestlers together and book his dream matches, right, of what he thinks the fans want to see, and that everything would just work out because everybody would be friends, right?
yeah,
And then you start getting something like that going on. He has no idea how to handle that.
yeah. And that's that's exactly what I'm saying. Like he is not that guy. Like he's not the guy to be the one to step on nuts if they need to be stepped on. He's like
I think that's a big problem. I think since Cody Rhodes left, because I think Cody would have been that guy.
oh totally.
Right. Cody Rhodes was the guy that I think kept all the drama in check and kept all the egos in check because everybody respected Cody. If Cody comes to you and says this or whatever, he had everybody's respect.
Yeah.
And Tony Khan doesn't have that guy. So when Cody left, if you realize when Cody left, that's pretty much the timeline of when this all started breaking loose. Because it was basically, Punk coming in really, but Punk was there for a little bit before Cody left.
Yeah.
And nothing was going on. So I think Cody leaving, that left a huge hole that has yet to be filled. I know some guys have tried to fill it, Jericho, Moxley, those, even the Elite or whatever, but they they have such big egos for themselves that they're not that guy.
No.
And they take sides. Whereas Cody put himself on the back burner. I mean, they crafted a story where he wouldn't even get to challenge for the championship again, and he never did.
Nope.
Until he left, you know? So, I mean, in storyline in kayfabe, it's like, it's no wonder Cody left, because he couldn't pay for the title anyway there, you know? But I digress. Let's move to the next thing that happened. So one of the next things that I heard about was actually
and as we're going through these, remember, these are all allegeds for the most part.
Because it's one-sided stories leaked to the dirt sheet.
It's very hard to acknowledge some of these. Now, there are some basis for things, like the Namath thing being sent home and stuff like that. That is all true. He was sent home. He did have to go on a flight. Like, that part is true. The connection to Punk is rumored. As well as a lot of these ones we're going to talk about are, but again, 3 divorces, you might be the problem.
So what are you counting as the 3 divorces here? I'm curious.
Well, it's an analogy, not an exact the one.
No, I know we're not talking about actual divorces, right? Like, Punk's been with a lot of women, but he's only married one of them, right? That I know of. But and they're happily married still.
Yeah.
But
she's leaving WoW, by the way.
Yeah, I heard that. That.
AJ Lee or AJ's
Mendez or I guess AJ Brooks.
Yeah,
because she's got Punk's last name.
Well, she's been working under Mendez. Like that's even her writer name is under Mendez.
Right, which is her, her maiden name.
Yeah.
But so the next thing that happened that I heard about also involved Hangman Adam Page. I guess like he had a pre-tape that was scheduled on like at Collision, and he was told he had to do the pre-tape away from the arena, right? That's what I heard. My thought on that is that if like Punk and the Elite haven't made up yet, which they haven't even been in, I mean, they've been in the same building, obviously, but they have not, I don't think they've been in the same room to talk to each other.
No.
Right. And so if that's the case still, then it makes sense. But if I'm Tony Khan, why am I, knowing that this is a situation, why am I booking those guys to appear on Collision? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So this could be another situation where he was never supposed to do the pre-tape at the arena, and he just got, he showed up and they said, let's do this away from the arena, because that's the agreement that was agreed upon behind everybody. Maybe there wasn't something like Punk like saying something new, saying, hey, don't let them in the building. Maybe it was something like the producers just knowing that, hey, we don't want to cause drama, so let's have you do your pre-tape over here. Like, this might not be anything new with Punk, but it's just getting leaked this way again.
I don't disagree with the thought that it is possible that this was not directly involving Punk, as it is more of the let's not start a fight scenario. And when it comes to stuff like this, like with pre-tapes and stuff, you often get assistant producers are the ones who contact you to be like, hey, we want you here so we can do this pre-tape, or we need to do this pre-tape at this other location, or what have you. And it's possible that an assistant producer may have done that, not recognizing the issue or not seeing this as a problem. And then when they got there, Tony Khan or one of the executive producers or somebody higher up, it's like, we can't do this here because of this, but you're here, so let's do this over here, or what have you. This could not involve Punk, but this restriction is due to the drama that Punk is involved in.
So this adds new information on this.
Okay.
I just pulled up.
Hot news dropping in.
Yes, I know, which is probably, and if somebody's really into this and they're reading, this is probably old news for them, but who knows?
By the time this airs.
Yes. But apparently, so all right, so at last week's Collision, a few AEW stars were sent home, one of whom was Paige, right? And the report has revealed that Punk did not play a role in that decision. Okay? He also reported, so Punk reportedly also told people that it was not his decision to send Isaiah Cassidy and Matt Hardy home. But he did concede he was responsible 100% for Ryan Namath and Christopher Daniels being sent away from last week's show.
Okay.
So and it also says an unnamed AEW star said that Punk is not interested in having certain AEW Dynamite stars on Collision, and that he is involved in several aspects of the Saudi show, including producing matches and segments. The real life feud between Punk and Page. Let's see here. Hold on.
Who is this from?
Okay. So this is being reported on Flagship Wrestling Podcast. So take that with a grain of salt, right? On this. But if that's true, and again, this is allegedly because this isn't Punk. I'm not hearing this from Punk himself.
Right. Or Tony Khan or something like that.
Right, exactly. Nobody that I know that's completely credible. If that's true, though, then the Matt Hardy, because Matt Hardy, and we hadn't touched on that, Matt Hardy was another one that was sent home, and apparently Isaiah Cassidy as well. Now, if that's true, then Punk had nothing to do with that. But originally it was leaked that way to make it seem like Punk had something to do with it. But if Punk is saying, I had nothing to do with that, but I did, and same thing with Adam Page, but I did have something to do with Ryan Namath and Christopher Daniels. See, the Christopher Daniels thing, he was sent home. That makes some sense to me, because I had heard that because he was one of the ones that was there to break up the fight, right?
Yes.
Of course, anybody was there that was breaking up the fight also got involved. Otherwise, why? I think there's more to the story, because why would he get suspended? Because Christopher Daniels was suspended at the time. And so there might be more to the story there of him just breaking up. It could be he jumped in and it got out of hand too, and he started fighting with people.
Supposedly he got bit by what's his name? Ace whatever.
Ace Steel.
Ace Steel. He like him and
I
Ace.
thought it was Kenny Omega that got bit.
Well, maybe Kenny Omega got bit too. Or that was the one I heard that got bit. But there was
still biting everybody,
right? But he's a little guy. Right. But no, like I did hear that him and Ace Steel were the ones that specifically got involved. Like that's who he was pulling off. So and Ace and Punk are really good friends. But again, Christopher Daniels is the head of talent relations right now. That's a guy you kind of have to have there.
I wonder, because I had heard that the reason why Punk didn't want Christopher Daniels there is because they're not letting Ace Steel be there. And if they're not letting Ace Steel be there, then why, it's a double standard type thing. And in that respect, it makes a little bit of sense because it's more a principle thing, right? It's
but hey, Ace Steel was involved in the fight, right? Daniels came in to quote unquote break it up. Now we don't know what level of that is,
right?
But Ace Steel was obviously more culpable based off of everything we've heard than Daniels was. And Daniels, again, is an executive. He's the head of talent relations. Ace Steel was nothing really. I think he was an agent at that point.
He was an agent, and I think he's still been, like, he got brought back to the company where he's helping with creative a little bit, helping produce just remotely is what I heard. So, but he's not allowed to be in the building. So, I mean, they both have, management roles, so to speak, right? Because they're not.
Yes, you have the guy who's kind of like the cook lead at McDonald's, relevant to the district manager of everything for all of McDonald's, right? Yeah, but they're both in management.
Right. But who has more power right now? Apparently Punk. Because if he got Christopher Danielson away, then Punk. This goes back to if you remember, like Tony Khan cut a or not a promo, but he was talking at one of a scrum or something like that, and he mentioned that CM Punk was handling management. You know, he was in management, and there's a quote out there where he says that Punk was in management. This is when he was still still gone, whether he was suspended or whether or not he was out with his injury and just waiting till that healed. Who knows? But it was during that time frame when Punk was off TV, and Tony Khan mentioned that Punk was management. So if that's the case, then maybe maybe he is higher up than Daniels. And so if that's the case, it makes sense from a principle standpoint, because I mean there's a lot of favoritism going on here, right? And there's a lot of bias with different sides. So I don't know my feelings on that, but
So you're telling me that let's assume that he's in some form of director role, right? Mm-hmm. So he's in a 2 steps under like a VP kind of level, mm-hmm. right? Sure. That's where Punk's at right now.
And I think for Collision, it seems like he is.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with that thought. But you're telling me that he could then tell the HR for the whole of the company to go bugger off somewhere because you, my friend, and you got into a fight, and my friend can't be here, so you can't be here.
I mean, it happened, so I guess he does have that pull.
So every person, every worker there cannot deal with their talent relation person in person because, or at Collision, because, or at, Collision, because Punk doesn't like Daniels. So the literal role that Daniels is doing, because he's not on TV, is to help manage and make sure that the guys are doing what they need to do. They're okay. They have any problems. Any concerns with any upper management people cannot be there because he doesn't like them.
If that's really his role, let's take this back a little bit. If that's really Christopher Daniels' role, why hasn't he been there the other weeks of Collision? Like, because he wasn't sent home for any of those other ones. It hasn't been reported.
It hasn't been reported that he was sent home. That doesn't mean he wasn't. He wasn't
requested
there.
Not to be there, maybe, or maybe he was there.
Yeah,
right. If he was there all this time, then this. I think there's more to these stories than we're being led on right now, and so obviously all of this is allegedly and us like grasping at straws, trying to put it all together.
Again, I don't agree. Like, there's definitely the story, and I would love to hear Punk's side of the story for all of it. I really would.
Right.
Because then you get a better idea of what the story is. But
Punk, if you're listening, come on our podcast. Right. That would be interesting.
Oh my gosh. I would totally be down to listen to all of that. Whether it's our podcast or wherever. But where we only have the one side, and there are being, and I'll agree with the thought that they are putting it into a unfavorable light for Punk, but they did the same thing with Cosby. Cosby had unfavorable stuff. Now this is different levels, different levels, by for sure. But I'm using this as an example, right?
This is a horrible example, but go on.
You go in for someone who is super beloved, like Cosby was, right? And then you get one person saying some stuff. It's like, oh, no way, man, no way. And then someone else like, oh, no, that's weird, but no way. And it keeps going, going, going. That's what's going on here with Punk, is someone that was not per se super beloved, but somebody that was like higher up there in opinion or respect. And these people just keep coming out of the walls, man, just saying this stuff and stuff. And again, like with Cosby, like there was stuff that was just way too out there that was never going to be true no matter what you said. Like that was not a possibility of that being true. But you had to filter all of that out for the real ones. And that's where we're at here. You have to filter out what is really happening. So like the Matt Hardy and Isaiah Cassidy stuff, right? Those obviously he wasn't directly involved in. I think there was an involvement, but to a less malice way, as in like, oh, we changed the story last minute and we really didn't need you guys, kind of thing. That's
Mhm.
probably more likely what happened with these
Right.
two, but with like Daniels and Namath, right? Those ones are, and he admitted direct involvement, right? And
Mhm.
Namath could also be, well, we decided to cut that, or we decided to put somebody else in there, so we didn't need you tonight, kind of thing. Those are all
And
possible things, but we don't know. And the
you
more
know
that
what?
these add up, the harder it is to believe that he's not being a douche.
You you know what's interesting though is if Punk is really helping, like put these matches together for Collision and everything like that, and produce these, why would he book these guys to begin with, only to have them show up, only to say go away? We don't, we don't need you.
Because he learned
Because
he learned under the master that is McMahon.
I mean, maybe that's true. Um, so I had brought up a story that you didn't know about, that I really only read the headline, so we're gonna learn about this on air for the first time.
Mhm.
Apparently there was, or actually no, we talked about it right before, but there was apparently an incident with Jungle Boy Jack Perry
Yes.
and CM Punk. And this one happened a few weeks ago. So it wasn't like recent, which is all the more interesting that it's coming out now, right? All at once with all this other stuff and being lumped in there. Let's see here. Okay, let me find it here. Okay, here it is. Okay, so
Reported by who?
so yeah, gotta name our sources. All right, so this one. Okay, so this is from the Wrestling Observer, right?
Okay.
So this is from Meltzer, right? Meltzer's camp. Which again, that's interesting. Um, but apparently there was a report that emerged Tuesday regarding a discussion slash argument between CM Punk and Jungle Boy Jack Perry on a past AEW Collision. Um, so apparently Perry was brought into one of the 4 Collision episodes filmed in Canada over late June, early July, to film a segment that contained a spot which Perry wanted to use real glass for. They did not report what the purpose of the segment was, but as the stories have gone the past few days with Punk's power on the Saturday Night Show, there are sides. According to the report, Punk felt Perry was throwing a temper tantrum over his desired use of real glass, despite production doctors and Tony Schiavone recommending otherwise. Punk reportedly felt Perry was trying to avoid having to work the next week, which he sees as a big problem in the company. Let's see here. Uh, Perry wasn't happy with the decision, and further guidelines were put into place for talent. It's not apparent if this was the impetus for those changes or one of several reasons. Punk's claim was that he was asked to step in and calmly said that they don't do that on Saturdays for Collision, and if he doesn't like it, he could stay on Wednesdays. Um, and then it was referred to as an argument by those in the locker room. Brian Alvarez, who's also part of Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer, he wrote in the afternoon that he had heard the story and thought something might have got lost in translation. So he says Jungle Boy had a vacation planned. He wanted to do a pre-taped angle with a car to write him off TV for that week. Punk told him no. He felt it was too dangerous to do a broken glass spot and said they cared about safety. Jungle Boy was upset about that. That is very different from the story that Jack wanted to do a dangerous spot as a way to avoid having to go to work. Let's see here. So that Hangman Adam Page thing.
Mhm.
So listen, it says there was a report by PWI Insider. It says several AEW sources said there was always a plan to have Page film a promo Saturday away from the building, which had nothing to do with Punk. So there you go. Punk happened to mention Page in an off-air promo after the show ended that he later apologized for, which we covered. But it's interesting because, like, on that standpoint, on the whole Jungle Boy thing, like, I side with Punk there. It's
I do as well. I think that it's the right call for that scenario, as well as the current role that he has, because he's obviously a
Mhm.
producer on the show, right?
Mhm.
He's working with the matches and booking the matches. So that's exactly who you need to go and get permission from in that scenario.
Mhm.
So I totally agree with that statement. In fact, we talked about this before we even started this, that I was on agreement. Like, Punk was in the right. And even the stuff with Adam Page, like, if they had already had a planned
Mhm.
thing and stuff
Right.
like that, it obviously it was misreported or reported in a way
Right.
to make it look the way it did.
I wonder why.
But that's also looking at it as people who are upset with Punk, right? It might
Sure.
not be specifically people from the elite doing it, but it
Mhm.
could be as simple
Sure.
as people looking for reasons to dislike Punk.
It
And
very easily could have been like Matt Hardy or something like that was told to, that they weren't needed. And Matt Hardy, who might not be a big Punk fan, right? Which he's said he's not, uh, he could have felt like Punk had something to do with it and kind of leaked that. Who knows?
yeah, and there's tons of things that it could be, right? But
Mhm.
the point of all of this conversation for the last hour, at
Mhm.
least on my end, is simply Punk seems to be the impetus for all of this, right? Good, bad, or otherwise. He's the impetus for all of this problem. You have a show created for one man's ego, and that is Collision. And that's Punk's show. A show that he's wanting as his territory, where he will have only the people he wants on there, right? And as a booker, fine.
Mhm.
That's your prerogative,
I
I
mean,
guess.
that's been done for, thousands of years, right?
But
For hundreds at least.
when you're only putting your boys in and not giving other talent like Ryan Namath an opportunity, that's not great booking unless the stories are there. And right now, AEW is lacking in story. Collision or Dynamite, either, or Rampage. None of them really have fantastic stories going on.
I think there's more stories on Collision because they've got the Punk stuff with the real world title, type thing. They've been doing the stuff with Andrade and the House of Black, and they've, carried that from one week to the next. Um I think they're trying, and the matches are really good that they're doing the matches with.
That's one thing AEW's always has, is they can have good matches. There are a lot of people that can have good matches, but I've never really enjoyed any of the stories coming out on any of them. And there might be a thing where they'll string a couple of weeks along with this decent stories, and that's how all of the shows are. But
What have you thought of the MJF and Adam Cole thing? I find that entertaining
I
of what I've seen.
I do for the most part. For what I've seen of it, it's I love Adam Cole. Um, he is probably one of my favorite workers right now in the business, and MJF as well. They're both
Double
fantastic.
clothesline.
Yeah, it's so good. Um, but going back to it,
Yes.
you have one person who is your issue, or who is the issue, right? Whether he's in the right, he's in the wrong, however, that is not for us to decide. Okay. Um, and I think that there are several times that he's in the right, going back with this
Mhm.
Jungle Boy thing, right? And we don't know the stuff with Ryan Namath. We don't know the stuff with Christopher
Right.
Daniels, so we can't say for sure whether he was in the right or not.
Mhm.
But I go back to my analogy, man. 3 divorces, it might be your fault. It might be something with you.
And maybe there's some, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? But at the same time, he's so valuable that I don't think the right move is to get rid of him either, because without Punk, are we even talking about AEW right now? Like, honestly, like,
We were talking about AEW for the time he was gone. We were talking about AEW for this time he became went over to W or to
it was
AEW.
okay. The time he was gone, they lost all direction. They lost all direction. It was a lot more boring without Punk on the shows. And maybe that's just my opinion, but that's how I saw it. Like their ratings dropped.
Oh yeah.
That's a fact. Their ratings went from drawing over 1 million and it still hasn't recovered. Like it's dropped to where at peak there's 700, 800,000.
You are correct. Right about the same time that Cody Rhodes left, all that stuff dropped. All those things went away. We talked about this earlier. All this shenanigans started right after Cody left. So, really, whose fault is it?
I mean, I guess I don't know. That's a good question, huh? I guess we'll see as things go on. If Punk brings them back over 1 million for Collision, then I think we'll be looking at things a little bit differently. I would think.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is there have been many great bookers over the years, great promoters who have said that nobody's bigger than the business. And if you bury every other person but one, or if you take off every other person but one, you're not going to have much of a company left.
It's not going to be
WCW.
It's not going to be every person though, because you've got your FTRs, your Miros, your Andrades.
Yeah,
these are all people I'm actually fans of.
Yeah.
Right. So most of the people I like,
you have your Steiners, you have your Buff Bagwells.
Like most of the people I like though are on Collision, and the few people that are mostly on Dynamite, they make appearances on Collision, like MJF, Adam Cole, those types. And then you have the guys that I'm like, on that stay over on Dynamite. I mean, I don't know. I'm a fan of Collision. And so whatever they're doing over there, it's working for me.
I'm happy for you. Like I'm never going to tell someone to not like wrestling because I don't like it, or like what there's going on because I don't like it. That's never been what I've been about. That's not what this podcast is about.
Right, sure.
But my thought is simply Punk. Like I do not like Punk. I've lost practically all respect for the man. If he can get you over 1 million without losing the workers that are there and continuing to lose the respect of other workers who are there right now, by all means, please do so. Right? I would love to see him be able to do something like that. I just don't know, man. Like the way that's been going, all the stuff that you hear, and it very well could be that you're only hearing the one side because it's only the people who are getting spurned by him that are saying crap. But again, like we said, where there's smoke, there's fire. So, and he has had a long history of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I don't know. People like Sean, those guys, they had the same kind of reputation, and I still loved watching them. So, as much as
that might be my problem. I don't like watching Punk anymore either. I can't stand his work wrestling. So,
are you not excited for Punk and Joe at Wembley Stadium?
I like Joe.
I think that's going to be a fantastic match.
I think I would have loved to seen this 10 years ago.
Yeah, true. That is true. But I still think they'll put on a good match in front of fans.
If Punk could go well, but change his style up to a style that works with him and his body now, I think there's an idea. Not Joe. I'm sorry, Punk. If Punk can go in a way where his body is now and not try to do things that he can't, like say a slingshot, clothesline, then there's a thing. The problem is though, he's kind of his style is stagnant, right? Like you look at somebody like Jericho, who always changes up his style, and his work or his wrestling style to what he can do and stuff like that. That's the great workers. Punk doesn't do that, and so it's going to be hard to see. But that being said, I'm still going to pay for the pay-per-view. I'm still going to watch it, and you're still going to come over to my house and watch it and get all giddy when Punk comes out, and you'll see me roll my eyes. So
because they got that pay-per-view at Wembley, and is it the night before they've got a WWE pay-per-view or a premium live event? Was that weekend? Or was it the next one that they do?
I think it's the next one.
Okay.
pretty sure it's the next one.
Okay. I know one of them. It was they both basically dominated the weekend.
Yeah. And I'm pretty positive now when I think about it, because the next one is Labor Day weekend. It's September 3rd for AEW,
Yep.
September 2nd.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
Wembley is
okay.
on the 27th.
7th. Yep, 27th.
Yep.
So not this Saturday, but not this
Saturday, but the following Saturday.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep. I also have my fantasy football I got to go do. And also I'm working a wrestling show the night before. So yay.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy next few weeks, because when WWE does their show and then we got the AEW one, we're going to have to like do a double episode or something to review both.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be a long weekend. With all that being said, guys, I know this is a long episode talking about Punk and all the drama going on, and I would love to hear your opinions on Punk and the drama. So hit us up on our social medias. It's going to be Be Hero Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also come out and reach out to us directly on our Facebook, or try again, on our website at BeHeroMedia.com. You can also now leave reviews right here on Spotify, so you can drop your review comment on there.
Yep, let us know who you sided with.
Or your opinion in general. You might not side with either and be right down the center and such, or you can go to the right side and side with me. So you can also reach out to me directly, in fact, at Mike Burke DCW on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, or Mike Burke Pro on Twitter, because they still will not let me have back my old handle.
Or me.
You can reach out to Psycho Wrestling on Facebook.
Yep.
You won't, though, because nobody ever does, but you can.
What? Man, it sounds like one side of the story being sent to the dirt sheets.
No, just the right opinion. That being said, guys, we have a lot of great stuff coming up for Devotion Championship Wrestling. Coming up this weekend, August 19th, we have a show right here at Light Tree Studios, back in session. It will be a great show. It will be a live taping. You can also find us, all of our live tapings, everything that gets posted every Thursday night on Fight TV, just like for Devotion Championship Wrestling. But you can catch us live for that taping here in Salt Lake City at Light Tree Studios on August 19th. Also, up in Ogden, we will be there for August 26th for Tussle Time. And then right back here in Salt Lake City, you can catch us for WCW. Try that again. DCW. I said so much earlier about WCW, it's stuck in my brain now. We'll be doing DCW Controlled, which will be at Trolley Square on September 16th. It's going to be a huge show. We're going to be having EC3 and Chris Adonis to that show, as well as so many others. In fact, one of my favorite people that we bring in on the regular, Sin Bodhi, will be there. I'm super excited. I love Sin. So, also former WWE star. So, you can catch us on there. And then lastly, we will be at Salt Lake City's Fan X between the 21st and 23rd. We'll be there for all 3 days. You'll be able to catch us there. You just need to pick up your tickets for Fan X. They're still available. Few are available. Go to Fan X's website for that. For all other tickets, go to our Facebook page at Devotion Championship Wrestling, or on Twitter at DCW Salt Lake. Salt Lake City, excuse me. All right. I think that is everything. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode and heard us rant. I promise you, we will probably leave all the Punk stuff here unless he goes off the rails more, and or there's a lot more drama that comes from stuff involving him. So, all right, guys. Well, Nikki, is there anything else left?
No, that's about it for now.
All right. For the rest of Be Hero Media, this has been Nick, this has been me, and this is us tapping out. Have a good night, guys.